Happy Devils Monday. This is the State of the Fan Address Special Edition, episode 209, as in Niner, as in walkie-talkie. Streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter Live, and Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network. Coming to you live from the Primetime Radio Studios here in North and South Jersey. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Pucks and Pitchforks blog editor-in-chief, Nick Villano. We've got a stacked podcast for you tonight. It's one of the biggest shows of the year with one of the biggest series of the year about to happen tomorrow night at the Rock, Devils versus Rangers. This podcast is titled Hudson River Rivalry Renewed. Nick, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fired up. Spoke.
It's playoff time. I'm making 3 podcast appearances this week.
Wow.
What it is.
Wow. Yeah, well, social media is starting to file in. We've got some great guests. Mike Morreale is going to come up shortly. Dan Rice, James Nichols, and Adam Herman. And I don't know how to pronounce the last name. Matt Vererame.
Say it like it sounds. Verderame.
Yeah, I need it like right in front of me. Yes. That silence, Nick. I was waiting for you.
I'm tweeting out the podcast and trying to get that social track.
Well, you gotta put your hand up and be like, "Look, I'm tweeting." But yeah, so we got a all-star lineup guests talking. Well, playoff hockey right now, and I really liked that article put out by all the writers on pucksandpitchforks.com. You can even see my prediction in there as well. I'm not going to spoil it for you.
13 writers on that, Sam. We got 13 writers together. That's the biggest collaboration article I've ever done for Pucks and Pitchforks. 3,000 words. But that's just the start. That's one of 5 articles that's out today on pucksandpitchforks.com. We got Ethan Fink writing about who are the most important players of the series. We got myself writing about four New Jersey Devils who desperately need to win a Stanley Cup this season. A lot of people talk about the youth of this team, how this team is young, it has time, this is the first of many. No, not for everybody. There are some players on this team who desperately need to lift the cup this season. That's up at pucksandpitchforks.com. David Holliday put up his every quarter he does grades. Well, he did full season grades. Went back and looked at his predictions from the start of the year and then compared it to what actually happened and gave grades. And the Devils did pretty well in those grades, folks. So that's up at pucksandpitchforks.com. Jonathan Bailey, he graded all the Devils acquisitions from the offseason now that the season is over. Kind of taking a look back. Some are incomplete because, Andre Palat, you kind of got him to do playoffs, and the playoffs haven't happened yet. So and then we have that Pucks and Pitchforks massive playoff preview, of course. 13 writers, 3,000 words. Every single person putting in a prediction for 5 separate questions having to do with the playoffs as a whole and this specific series. It is Rangers and Devils. It is mind-boggling that we are here. The playoffs have begun. Carolina took an early lead on the New York Islanders. I saw Sebastian Aho score the first goal. The funny thing about that is you don't know which Sebastian Aho. It was the good one, by the way. Playoff hockey is here. We did our predictions for every series last night on the flagship Let's Go Devils podcast with Short Sky and Beer Baron and Scotty and the guys from Hockey on Tap. It was a fun podcast. It was great to preview that, but I love being here and being able to take a Devils focus to all this and kind of being able to see very specifically how everybody thinks about the Devils. And tonight's podcast is going to be interesting because I try to get pure fans. I try to get analysts who have covered the team And I try to even get somebody with a Rangers bias. I try to be unbiased here in the Let's Go Devils podcast today, the fan address. So that's coming up at 8:40. But right now, it looks like Sam is back with our 7:30 guest.
Yes, I'm back. Talking to Mike Morreale, off air. He's from NHL.com, Devils beat writer. You can find him on Twitter at Mike Morreale NHL. Mike, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight?
What's going on, guys? Glad to join the program, and it's an exciting time of year, right? Particularly when you can get a Rangers Devils first round playoff series, no matter what round it is, to get a playoff series, get the Hudson River rivalry started here. It's going to be some series. I'm really looking forward to it.
And that's the thing, is that jumping into the postseason for the first time in 5 years, no matter who the opponent was, this fan base was going to be through the roof. But the fact that it's Rangers, the fact that it's the biggest rival, the fact that, there's talks of inferiority complex, there's talks of one cup in 80-something years, there's all of that comes rushing back for each fan base. How do you think the fact that this is the rivalry, the biggest rivalry for these teams, how is that going to impact the series as a whole?
Well, look, I think overall the fan base, both fan bases are excited. I remember after the final regular season game, Sam and Nick, after that regular season game, I remember being in the locker room for the Devils, and some of the players were even saying, "Man, there was a little too much blue for my liking at Prudential Center." So, hoping it could be a little bit more red, come Tuesday and Thursday, of course. But I mean, just the fact that the fans go back and forth for both, for these type games, and then the playoffs, it's ramped up even more. This is it. I mean, the rivalry doesn't get any better than this. I mean, teams have had their share. I mean, as far as the Devils go, I mean, the Flyers are always up there. As far as the rivalry goes, I mean, as far as the Rangers, the Islanders as well. I mean, the Flyers have always been a big rival with the Devils for so many years, during the Devils Cup years when they played them in the playoffs. But the Rangers-Devils series is always something about it. And, I know players from both sides are really ramped up for this. You look at what each team has, what each team brings. They have their own elements, their own styles, and what they can do. I think the Devils are the fastest team in the East. I think that's going to be challenging for the Rangers. And, you speak of the depth that the Devils have as well, which has been on full display this year. Even though they've had an injury here and there, they're able to replace on D or on forward with the depth that they have, and then the experience of the Rangers and their goaltending. That's the thing that's going to play a major part in here. Can, Vitek Vanacek go save for save when Shesterkin is making those big ones down at the other end? And he has the capability of doing that. So a lot of intrigue. The fans are going to be pumped up. A lot of excitement, guys.
So this is it. The Rangers Devils, when I look at all the series that are happening in the first round, I remember last year it was just an incredibly fun first round. There was a lot of game sevens from what I recall. And when I look at all the series, I'm like, I don't know if that one will go to 7. There's some fun series. Kings and Oilers should be fun. Minnesota and Dallas, I think, should be fun.
Mm-hmm.
But when I look at this Devils-Rangers series and kind of what they both bring to the table – and the amount of stars. Yeah, I mean, just look at the trade deadline acquisitions. You have Timo Meier, Curtis Lazar against Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko. It's these two teams went for it, and now they face each other in the first round. In your opinion, is this the series to watch in the first round?
Yeah, I mean, Hudson River rivalry. It's the first playoff series pitting, the Rangers and the Devils against each other since 2012. And yes, I do think it's the best first round matchup, but guys, I might be a little biased since I'll be watching and excited to be staffing every game of this series, so there's a little bias there. But look, the Devils are back in the playoffs for the first time since 2017-18, finishing the regular season, 52 wins, 112 points, both records, team records. And the Rangers are trying to get back to the Eastern Conference Final for the second straight season. So, New York had a fantastic season as well, finishing with 107 points, 47 wins. The Rangers lead this playoff head-to-head against the Devils 18-16 all time. With the Rangers, when I look at their club, it's going to work or it's not. And you mentioned some of the pickups, obviously with Kane and Tarasenko, bringing these players in. Maybe they didn't need Kane. I know the fans were really high and wanting to bring him over. Tarasenko was a good fit there, but we'll see how the chemistry works in the playoffs. It just seems like the chemistry with Meyer after a couple games, you guys have seen it. Like, it just seems like each game he's just gotten a little bit more comfortable in the role that he's playing. Particularly in that third line role that he's sharing right now, and he's getting the job done there. And I thought in that final regular season game against the Rangers, that might have been one of his best games, if not his best game as a Devil. 5 hits. I remember him leading the game in the hit department. He had a goal in that game, and he was just all over the ice. And that's why Tom Fitzgerald brought him over and acquired him at the trade deadline, because he is that good a player, and that's the type of thing that he's going to need to do in a series of this magnitude against the Rangers, because we all know that besides being a fast, their power play is extraordinary, and a pretty deep team the Rangers are. They're also very physical, and besides the goaltending guys, which I think the Rangers have a little bit of an edge. We'll see how Vitek plays. He's had an outstanding regular season, and I think he's going to play well. But we got to give Shesterkin the edge here. But the other edge is, when you look at Jacob Trouba for the Rangers, a guy that when he's on the ice, opposing teams, opposing players have to watch out for him. They have to keep their heads up, because if Trouba lays into you, that's a game changer right there. If he's able to get that big hit, it changes the complexion of a game, whether they're up a goal, whether they're down a goal, whether it's a tie game, late in the game, middle of the game, doesn't matter. You lay a big hit like that, and Trouba's perfectly capable of doing that. That's a game changer. So do I think the Devils have a player like a Jacob Trouba? Probably not. I mean, we know they got some players on their club that can fight, that can drop the mitts, that'll make some big hits, that aren't afraid to mix it up in the corners. But when it comes to the big hits, you got to watch out for a guy like Trouba. But other than that, I think this is a pretty even series, just up and down the lineup. The experience thing is a big thing, and it was a big talking point. But I think this is at least going 6 or 7 games.
Let me ask you that, because it is a talking point. They talk about it all the time. Experience, experience, experience. The Devils don't have the experience. They should be happy to be here, yada, yada, yada. But that's not how you usually talk about a 112-point team. Usually it's as a true contender. Like, can this team win the Stanley Cup? And
right.
I'm starting to see some people come to this side, but it's just very, very few. Do you take a lot, like, as somebody who's covered a lot of teams, you've seen, and you focus on youth, you are a draft expert, you do understand the youth, the impact that youth can have in this team. Do you think that the experience matters as much as people are making it out to be?
I found it interesting today, guys. Lindy Ruff said after practice that a lot of his players haven't been inside a playoff game. So I think the advantage goes to the Rangers a little bit right off the bat, because they've lived it and have been there. But then he went on to say his players are a bunch of rebels, young rebels ready to go. I mean, how cool is that, right? Look, the Devils are a young group. It's pretty light. It has, kind of ignored the expectation label all year. I mean, nobody really had them in this position, and they don't feel like they don't deserve to be here. They feel they've earned the right to have home ice, to be the higher seed, because they know how great a team they can be when clicking on all cylinders. They're young, but they are, in my opinion, the club with the most speed of these teams in the Eastern Conference. That they're trying to play the right way. They had learning curves throughout the course of the year, and it'll be the same in the postseason, I'm sure. But from what I've gathered these last 4 days at least, and we've seen the regular season, but the last 4 days talking to some of the players in the locker room after practice, the Devils believe in themselves, and they believe they can win.
So you mentioned Vitek versus Shesterkin earlier, and kind of how the Rangers do have the edge, and you can't deny that. He's the reigning Vezina Trophy winner. He really came on towards the end of the season. But Vitek, at times, was a brick wall. So he has played more games than he's ever played in his career. Even if you include playoffs, he's never played this many games before. Are you going in to this series with confidence that the guy in net can make the stops.
Yes, absolutely. Like you said, he had the breakout season, his first with the Devils. He set those career highs across the board with games played, starts, wins, goals against, save percentage, shutouts. There were some concerns about Vanacek about a month ago when he was in a 7-game stretch. I believe it was from late February to mid-March when he was 4-3. I think he had he was north of 3.5 GAA, and the save percentage was pretty miserable. I think he had something, from I remember writing it, 24 goals allowed on 170 shots or so. But he bounced back and finished strong. Went 5-3-1 with a 2.12 and a 9.22 save percentage in the last 9 games. So that's what you want to see. And one of the areas that Vitek, and I don't think a lot of people talk about it enough, and what a lot of the defensemen were telling me the past few days, guys, is, Dougie Hamilton, in fact, mentioned it, as did Damon Severson. But everyone can see he's got that confidence in the net. But I think the underrated thing is how he plays the puck. I think that's a huge thing for the defenseman, the way he's able to come out, stop the pucks, or feed them along, kind of like Martin Brodeur-esque and what he's able to do in that regard. And that's huge for the defense, particularly against a team like the Rangers or any team with that heavy, hard forecheck. If you have a goaltender that's not afraid to come out of the crease and stop the puck and deliver it to, the defenseman that's right there in the corner to start the transition, that's what you want. That's what you need. So Vitek has been able to do that, and it's probably a part of his game that's not talked about enough, but we'll see how big that comes in this series, because it could be a major talking point, in fact.
So, and for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, I just tweeted out Mike Morreale's article that he did, kind of connecting Brodeur to Vitek. I think it was a really well-done article for NHL.com. So
thank you.
Anybody looking to do that, that's on the Pucks and Pitchforks Twitter account, also Mike's Twitter account as well. But before we let you go, Mike, I got to ask about the elephant in the room. And you mentioned Dougie Hamilton and Damon Severson. That defensive group seems like it's set in stone. But when you put in a wild card, it's hard to not pay attention to it. And Luke Hughes played better than I think anybody expected him to play in his first 2 games. He played a little bit against in that first game against Buffalo, and then he played a ton. I think he played like 17 minutes in that second game against Washington, scored the overtime game winner in a major comeback, and never looked out of place. Do you think, you've been following this kid for a long time, you've seen him grow? He comes right out of the University of Michigan, where he was the top defenseman there. Do you think he should be in the lineup?
He'll be in the lineup at some point, I think, guys. I think game 1, Lindy, being that old school type coach, and maybe I'm being a little too hard there, because, Lindy has had to deal with a lot of young players the past few years, and he's done a real nice job with them. But knowing the mentality, let's put it that way, of how Lindy might want to coach in the playoffs, or wants to play, how to start the playoffs. I would think he wants to rely on guys that have gotten him there, 80 games, 81 games. And, that group consists of, what Siegenthaler has been able to do with Hamilton, what Ryan Graves and his pairing partner with John Marino. And then Kevin Ball, let's face it, guy, has really come into his own this year, and what he's been able to bring to the team, not only as a, kind of an offensive type of guy and moving the puck, but being that defensive defenseman, when they really need a guy. And he just needs to use that physical frame of his a little more in the corners and in front of the net. And, I think the Devils really got something there in Ball, but he's played a major part in this team and the team getting to where they are right now. So Ball with Severson would be a third pair for me. I think, game 1 at least, Luke sits one out, sees what it's like, this playoff intensity, this playoff atmosphere, young player coming in. There's no need to throw him to the wolves right now. Do I think he'd be able to handle it? Yeah, I do. But again, I'm rolling with the guys that got me here, that laid the groundwork, laid the foundation for the team they have right now and where they are. The Devils are, I mean, the Rangers are going to be a hard team. They're going to have a hard forecheck. So let Luke, sit and watch and see what the Rangers throw at them in this playoff type intensity. Now, the thing is, I think when a player is on the roster, there's always a possibility he's going to play. And as you said, he played well against the Sabres and the Caps to end the regular season. But as Lindy Ruff told us a few days ago, you have to look at the Washington game as a different animal when trying to evaluate because of what went on in that game. That it really meant nothing to Washington since they were out of it, and you're not sure of their mentality and how aggressive they were and what they were doing. Now, Luke played really well. I thought Bryce Salvador, the analyst there for MSG, did a splendid job and, pointing out the good points that Luke was able to do in turning the puck, the transition, the shots, and then that end-to-end rush where he finally ended it in overtime. It was just fantastic to watch. It just gives us a little sprinkling of what to expect in the future for, this guy that could be running the point for a long, long time for the Devils. But game one, I think maybe he sits, guys, and then we'll see how these other guys do against the Rangers. And if they need that guy, maybe a game 2, 3, 4, whenever it might be, he'll get his opportunity, I'm sure.
And Mike, before I let you go, do you have any fun predictions for the series? Not necessarily. I figure you're going to put it in your writing what you think the series come down to. Do you have anything bold that you think is going to happen?
I do think that special teams are going to play a major role. Quietly the Devils' penalty kill has been really good this year, and the Rangers' power play has been, prolific. So, the Devils, there's been a lot of talk about, we got to stay out of the box. We can't take a lot of penalties. So, maybe there won't be a lot of penalties, or maybe there won't be a lot of power play opportunities in this game because both teams want to stay disciplined. They know each of the other teams, with the Rangers, you're looking at the Devils as this fast, really quick team. And the Devils know how, dominant the Rangers can be on the power play. So maybe both teams, hold back a little bit as far as the tripping and the clutching and the grabbing, and they just go all out. Maybe we'll see some big hits. Maybe there might be a couple fights. But for the most part, maybe we won't see as many penalties as maybe, you usually see in a Ranger-Devil series because they know each time you're in the box, you're giving the other team a good chance to possibly win the game. And other than that, I just think Vanacek is going to play well, and I'd like to see obviously Jack Hughes do some good things here in this series because of the season he had with the 99 points, 43 goals. It'd be special to see him, maybe pop a few in this series, and obviously he wants to play well because when the games get tougher, particularly at the program, when I watched him, he always wanted to be the guy that was there to bring the victories, to bring the goals and the points. So I think in a series against the Rangers, when it's ramped up even more, Jack is going to be even more motivated to do to do what he does best, and that's being that playmaker, that's being that goal scorer for the Devils as he was during the regular season.
Mike, before I let you go, I want to give you a sec just to kind of plug what you got. I know you and Dan are the go-to guys for this Devils-Rangers series, you and Dan Rosen for NHL.com. You got any fun articles coming out tomorrow or this week for covering the series?
Yeah. So Dan did a real a story today on the rivalry in general, and what it meant to the Devils and Rangers of past years. Dan was able to talk to, of course, Marty Brodeur. He got Mike Rupp, on record, and Rupper was telling a good story, and it's in today's piece that he ran about. He actually went to and from Madison Square Garden when they used to play the Devils when he was with the Rangers, and he actually had to break up a fight between a Devils fan wearing a Brodeur jersey and a Rangers fan. So they were on the train going over, and he had to break up a fight between the two of the fans. So that was a funny story. And then there's a story coming out tomorrow about just the matchup and what both teams think will be keys in stopping the other team. So we'll have it covered. Dan will be doing most of the Rangers end of things, and of course I'll be doing most of the Devils end of things. And another thing for fans to check out, guys, is Central Scouting's final rankings of North American and international skaters will be released tomorrow at 11 a.m. That's April 18th at 11 a.m. So I'll have two stories there, one North American story, one international story. Of course, I don't think I'm, it's much of a surprise. I think we all know who's going to be number one on the North American list in Connor Bedard. But yeah, those lists come out tomorrow, and I'll have two stories to accompany the list. So that's something else to look forward to. But looking forward to tomorrow's Game 1 opener, guys. No doubt about it.
Love to hear that, Mike. Definitely we'll keep an eye out for that. And we love the draft stuff, even though we don't even have a first-round pick, but we still got to look for the steals. The steals.
That's it.
And
That's it.
You help us find the steals, Mike. But we'll look forward to your coverage, Mike. Thank you so much for coming on. We are definitely going to have you on again. Hopefully it's later on for a deep playoff run. But, Mike, thanks again for coming on. We'll have you on again soon.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Nick. Enjoy the playoffs, boys.
Thanks, Mike. That is Mike Morreale of NHL.com.
Yeah, I mean, phenomenal analysis right there. Luke Hughes is the elephant in the room, right? He is the elephant. He is this 19-year-old elephant who's you just – how do you keep him out of the lineup after those two games? But who do you take out? I don't feel good about taking Kevin Ball out of this lineup, and you're not going to take Graves or Siegenthaler out of the lineup. And please don't go 11-7 in the playoffs. There's no good answer here. You had to play him in those two games to get him some NHL experience, and now you're in the worst possible scenario, but it's good. You have options, hopefully that drives competition. You don't want to have to drive competition in the playoffs, but whatever. I don't care what it takes to win. If it's driving competition between Kevin Ball, Luke Hughes, and Ryan Graves, I'm all for it. You got to push everybody, and Luke Hughes is just breathing down every defenseman's neck. And he's right there, and he's ready to go. He's better than advertised.
Hey, Nick, the YouTube Live and Facebook Live are complaining of their static on my end. I don't hear it. Is my static?
It's better now.
Let me reset my board.
Okay.
Yeah, you talk.
Well, I could just keep going.
Yeah.
Just James will be on here any minute. So whenever he's here, just pop him up. I'll start talking to him. Anyway, so yeah, I think Luke Hughes is the thing that I don't know how to make it make sense, right? Because again, Kevin Ball has been so good down the stretch, and he's like the one that you would think makes the most sense to replace. Like he's on that bottom pairing with Damon Severson, and that's the good news. The good news for Luke Hughes is it's not like you're going to throw him into a playoff matchup with a guy with no experience. Damon Severson still has playoff experience. He played 4 games with the Devils in 2018. John Marino has, 3 series under his belt with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And Dougie Hamilton has been in the playoffs 5 seasons. He went pretty deep with the Hurricanes the first year that he was on that team. I forget. Was it the Eastern Conference Finals that team made it to? I think that the first year he was with Carolina, they made the Eastern Conference Finals. So he's got, he's been with Boston. He's been in the playoffs with Calgary. He's been in the playoffs. This is now his 4th team he's been in the playoffs with. So whoever you put Luke Hughes in the lineup with, as long as you don't go 11-7. Don't go 11-7. Any other way, whoever you put Luke Hughes in the lineup
Why
with,
not?
it's going to work out. Because it's never worked. You're double shifting somebody. So you're wasting. So you got what? Say you got 19 minutes of Jack Hughes in the game, right? You're wasting 8 of those 19 minutes to have him play with Michael McLeod and Nathan Bastian. And I like those players, but not with Jack Hughes. Or you're double shifting Nico Hischier, so when there's a penalty kill, then you're in a real bind because he had to play a lot of the penalty kill. And the Rangers' power play is the thing I'm worried about the most next to Shesterkin. So there's no reason to do 11-7. It puts a lot of stress on Lindy Ruff to have to make constant decisions, and I want him to focus on the big decisions, not on silly little lineup decisions and how to regulate Nico's minutes and how to regulate Jack Hughes' minutes and how to regulate Eric Hollow's minutes. I don't want to have to deal with that just because you're trying to, stick somebody in the lineup. If Luke Hughes is better than somebody on the left side of the defense, then he plays. It's that simple.
Yeah. Well, why don't we ask our next guest? He's from the fourth period. He's a Devils beat writer. At James Nichols NHL is his Twitter handle. James Nichols, welcome to the podcast.
What's going on, fellas? How are you?
We're doing great. It's a big night tonight. We're trying to get as much of that press box as we possibly can. We just had Mike Morreale on. Now we have James Nichols in the fourth period. So it's going to be a fun night. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Playoff hockey is underway. It's the best time of year. So, excited and ready to get rolling here.
And before we jump in, how busy are you right now with the Islanders and the Devils playing at the same time?
I get this question a lot, and the answer is very. Like every minute of every day, even my wife will turn to me sometimes and be like, "Hey, remember me?" And and I'm like, "Yes, of course." I just got to get this last, sentence done, and then I'll give you a little bit of my attention. But busy. It's all good things, but definitely busy.
I understand that. My wife is currently 8 months pregnant, so she's just like, so you know, I know it's playoffs. I know you've been writing for 5 years and you haven't made the playoffs, but I got this baby thing going on. I'm like,
Yeah.
I know.
Mine's 8 months old. Mine's
Yeah.
8 months old. She just got over being sick. Like it was a tough week with juggling that and all the prep that's coming for what's happening right now with the playoffs. So yeah, I get it, man. It's a lot of balls in the air.
So I want to just jump right into the meat of it. You wrote
Yeah.
about Jack and Luke's connection for the fourth period. I was talking about how Luke is just the elephant in the room. I don't know what to do with him. Like personally, I usually have an answer for everything. It's not always the right answer, but I usually have an answer. Don't have one for here because I don't want to sit Kevin Ball. Don't want to sit Ryan Graves. So I'm just going to go to you. You've talked to Lindy Ruff a lot this season. You've talked to him recently. Do you think Lindy Ruff is going to play Luke in this series?
I don't think he would be uncomfortable doing it, but I think he's just going to go with what got him there, right? Luke Hughes realistically has only been there for the last 2 weeks, right? And although he looked excellent in his debut and then his encore, playoffs are a whole different game, right? He's 19 years old. He just got out of we're still in college technically. Actually, we were talking to him about that the other day. He has an assignment due quite soon, but he's just 19 years old, and like, look, he went to the Frozen Four, which was great experience for him, playoff type atmosphere, if you will. But it's a whole different ball game at this level. So I don't think he'll be uncomfortable putting him into the lineup if something happens where Luke Hughes needs to be in the lineup, say an injury or something like that. But I'm a firm believer that Lindy Ruff will go with what got him there. Obviously, Kevin Ball is playing really well right now, and one of the cliches coming into the postseason is having that playoff experience, and let's just say Kevin Ball does come out of the lineup. Well, who has more experience on this team than Brendan Smith right now? So not many. So that's the thing. Like he's there too. So we'll see. But the thing is, if he does get in the lineup, like I said earlier, he looked really good. He looked like he had been there the whole season. Small sample size, but I'm impressed so far. So I guess we'll see. But not unless something happens with like an injury or something like that.
All right, so I asked you what Lindy Ruff would do. What would you do if James Nichols is the coach of the Devils? You saw what Luke Hughes looked like in those first 2 games. Are you starting him?
No, I think I'm still going with what got me there. Like I said, they've cohesively been such a good unit together. Obviously, they've had their ups and their downs, but they maintained third place in the NHL since December. Like they, not just the Metropolitan Division, they were second in the Metropolitan Division, back and forth with the Canes for a while. But I mean, maintaining third place in the NHL overall for several months. I mean, you're a really good hockey team, so you go with what got you there. Obviously, the excitement of Luke Hughes being here is it's something to consider, but you don't throw him right into the fire. That's what I believe. So I wouldn't throw him in just yet. Maybe let him, sit up in the press box and observe for, a couple games. And, again, if they need him, he's there. And honestly, if he continues to play the way he did, it's a luxury to have him as the seventh or eighth guy. Because he looked, like I said, really good. He's got good size. He's a really good skater. He's got really good poise. So, having him as a seventh or eighth guy is a really good problem to have. But yeah, you definitely, I'm not starting him game one. I'm not, starting him game 2 or 3 even. Like I said, unless, you really need him in case of an injury or something like that.
So I'm going to change gears a little bit because I've talked a lot about, between the last question from Mike and your first question, I think we've been talking about Luke Hughes for about 30 minutes right now. So I'm going to change gears a little bit. I kind of want to talk about just like the strategy and just kind of the numbers. Obviously 5v5 in the last 10 years has taken, as far as stats, everybody's kind of looking at those even strength numbers. I shared a stat yesterday on the Let's Go Devils flagship show that the Devils lead the league in high danger chances according to Natural Stat Trick, and the New York Rangers have the worst difference between high danger chances allowed and high danger chances for of any playoff team. They're literally on the opposite sides of the spectrum. So do you think the Rangers being weak at 5v5 and the Devils being incredibly strong, do you think that that's something that the Rangers can overcome, or is, we've seen in the regular season, they do struggle with it?
Yeah, if they're gonna overcome it, it's just gonna be because Igor Shesterkin is their goaltender. So, if they have a crutch, it's him. But like you said, and those statistics show, you're right. The Devils are possession monsters, and one of the things that Lindy Ruff and Nico Hischier have been reiterating over and over again all season is constant puck pressure, all 3 zones, no matter if you're on offense or if you're defending, constant puck pressure. And, the thing about the Devils is, they are so fast. And the Rangers, don't get me wrong, they have an excellent top 6. The kid line's really good. They have a tough fourth line to play against. However, their speed is just not up to the same par as the Devils' speed. So the thing for the Rangers is going to be, how do we slow these guys down? And, it's very possible that you can. I mean, there was an ongoing debate on Twitter amongst fans about, the first hit that Jack Hughes takes, he's going to be out for X amount of games. I'd be worried. And then, in come the Devil fans, rightfully so, saying, well, what about this missed check that he made happen because he's just, he's a really good skater and he can make that kind of happen. What about this missed check? He just makes these defenders miss their checks, right? So, the speed is a factor. In this, it's a huge factor in this, in my opinion. The puck possession, the puck pressure. It's going to be a tough challenge for the Rangers, in my opinion. This going into the playoffs before we knew what the seedings were. We were at that Islander game on Long Island toward the end of the season, me, Ryan, and a couple of the other beat writers, and we came out of that saying, man, the Devils don't want the Islanders. The Devils don't want the Panthers. Teams like that are going to bang bodies and really slow you down. This was the best matchup possible for them in the first round. And if it turns into, a speed competition, a skill competition, the Devils could come out on the other side. I think that the Rangers are going to have a tough time with it. Albeit on the other side of the conversation, obviously the Rangers have been there and done that before. And even Lindy Ruff has recognized they're an excellent high-speed skilled team, but maybe just not as high speed and skill as the Devils right now. But again, they have the experience factor on their side. So,
yeah, and I'm curious of what you think. What kind of a factor does that experience have? Do you think it's, do you think, because everybody is talking about it? Devils beat writers, Rangers beat writers, national beat writers. How much does the experience matter?
I say that tongue in cheek too, because I look at the list of players on the Devils who actually do have experience as well. Andre Palat, Eric Halla, John Marino, all of these guys that have recently come in and have recently been in the playoffs. They're on this team. So there's plenty of guys too on the Devils that have the playoff experience. It's just the core guys like Nico Hischier, who has very limited time, Jesper Bratt, who has very limited time, Jack Hughes, who has no time. You wonder how they're going to adjust. I think they're going to be fine if they continue playing the game that they've played all season long. Obviously, turn it up a notch just because of the circumstances. But it is a bit of a factor. You have to know how to turn that notch up. but it's not the only factor. I wouldn't say it's the biggest factor here. And because they have guys like Andre Palat in the locker room, I'm sure that they're going to get in their ear and be like, hey, this is what we got to do. And there's a bit of a swagger around the team right now, like at morning skate and everything. Like they're all pretty confident, and their shoulders are broad, and they're here for business. Like they're not in a cocky sense. Like they're ready to go.
So you look at the series. I'm sure you've done more research than I did for my finals in college. And I got to know, when you look at this Rangers team, what are you most worried about? Whether it's a matchup, whether it's Shesterkin, like what are you most worried about with this Rangers team?
Yeah, I alluded to it before. It's Shesterkin, right? Because the you look at the forward groups, you can almost wash the skill. You can almost wash the scoring ability. You look at the blue lines, you can almost wash the defenses, right? What's the obvious factor for the Rangers that they have over the Devils? It's the goaltending. Don't get me wrong, Vitek Vanacek has been excellent this season. He stabilized the Devils' crease, and it's been a revelation for them. If they got this goaltending last year, you wonder if they might have been in the playoffs, right? But they didn't, and then in comes Vitek Vanacek, and things have been great, but he's not Igor Shesterkin, who is the reigning Vezina Trophy winner. So there's the possibility that they throw 45 shots on net, and Igor Shesterkin just turns into a brick wall and decides, yeah, you're not beating me today. It's not going to happen. And all the Rangers need is for Tarasenko to be fed by Panarin for a scoring chance, and boom, they're up 1-0. They're up 2-0. So the biggest factor for the Devils to overcome against the Rangers is Igor Shesterkin, hands down, because you can wash the offenses, you can wash the defenses, but the goaltending, advantage Rangers.
So I kind of want to get, and I'll probably follow up on this, but I'm curious of what you're looking at when you look at this series as a whole. Do you have like a bold prediction? Like so much can happen, and when I was trying to come up with a bold prediction, it was a million things went in my head. So do you have one? Can you help me out with a bold prediction so I can kind of follow up on that?
Yeah. For you mean just for this round or for the entirety of the playoffs?
Well, if you have one for each, I'll take them. How about that?
Okay. I'll go with, for this round. I'll go with Eric Haula. Eric Haula is going to be the MVP of this round, and I'll even go one further, and I'll say he could be the MVP of the playoffs. If you look at his recent numbers, I think since March 1st, he's like tied for the team leading goals with 9. But he's also, in his history as a playoff performer, which, by the way, he's never missed the playoffs in his career. Every season he's been there. He's a half point per game player, right? And he scored something like 40 points this year, which is a little bit under that mark, but he brings his game a little bit to a higher level in the playoffs. So Eric Howell has been there. He's done that, and he's performed. So I could see, top sixes are going to win you games. Bottom sixes are where you win your championships. And he's going to, I think he's going to be that third line center. And so I could see Eric Howell having a really big, not just series, but I could see him having a big playoffs here.
So Lindy Ruff has been known to kind of mix the lineup. He's been here for 3 years. He's done it the entire time he's been here. He's never really stuck with one lineup. He has for the past 2 weeks, kind of. But again, you saw some different things. Some guys were out of the lineup, and you saw him kind of change things up. But if Eric Haula is as good as you say, do you think he ever goes back to that Jack Hughes, Eric Haula matchup that did so well for Hughes? Now, Haula couldn't finish, but Hughes was at the peak of his powers. Do you see that happening in the playoffs?
I don't think he has to now, because Timo Meier's here, and Meier plays pretty well on that. Right now he's playing on the third line with Eric Haula, which, do we anticipate that being his role on the team moving forward? No. But right now they're kind of so deep that it's working, and he's spreading the minutes out pretty well, where the second and third line are kind of like 2 second lines anyway. But Jack Hughes is also playing pretty well with Andre Palat and Jesper Bratt, so I don't know that that they have to do that, just because those two middle 6 lines are kind of like 2 second lines. So if anything happens, I think you could see Meier switch with Palat if he needs to, because I think Palat down the stretch had a bit of a hard time. But playoff plot is activated now. So we'll see if he raises his game like he did with when he was with Tampa. So I don't know how much line shuffling is going to happen moving forward. You're absolutely right. He has done, Lindy Ruff has done it so many times. It's actually made me pull my hair out. But I think that now that we're in the thick of it, we're in the playoffs here. I think he knows. Okay, I got to leave these guys together to form some chemistry. If it doesn't work in the first 20 minutes, I got to give him a little bit more time to try and work this chemistry out here.
So real quick before you go, I got like 2 more minutes with you. So I just want to know what you think of this Islanders-Carolina series. Do you think Carolina is ripe for the taking?
This has upset written all over it. The fact of the matter is that they're down Max Pacioretty, who they actually never had. I think they had 2 or 3 games, and he scored like 2 or 3 goals in that time. And Andrei Svechnikov. That's like 2 of their best goal scorers. Now they still have, Sebastian Aho. They still have Seth Jarvis and Martin Nichols. Those are guys who can score your goals. But when you have a goaltender like Ilya Sorokin, who in my opinion this season has been the best goaltender in the NHL, he could just steal you a series. And when you have a goaltender that's as good as a guy like Sorokin or Shesterkin, all the above like that, you can get in the minds of shooters, and that can start making them grip their sticks a little bit tighter and making them think a little bit too much. So and the other thing too is the Islanders play a game where they beat you up. They will beat you up while they're beating you, and that's tough to overcome. I think that this every single matchup in the first round is actually really good, but this one for me spells upset for sure, just because of the goaltending factor.
Yeah, and I agree. I think Sorokin's been by far the best goaltender in the league. I remember back in the day, I was like, "Oh, you got a nice, whatever the 4 version of triumvirate is," but it was between Shesterkin, Sorokin, Hart, and then I will admit that I wrote Blackwood into that foursome, and I was like, "Oh, it's going to be great goaltending for the next 10 years." And well, that didn't work out, James.
Yeah,
worked out for them, not for us.
It worked out for Shesterkin. It worked out for Sorokin and Carter Hart too. Listen, Mackenzie Blackwood, you were right for having written that when you did, because at the time, I mean, look, before last season, he was being considered as the starter for Team Canada. Health just hasn't persisted for him, and because of that, he hasn't been able to persist his development. So it's been a battle for him, and it's tough to see a situation like that, but Akira Schmid's here now.
James, before I let you go, do you have anything on the docket? Any cool articles coming up on the 4th period?
Yeah, I'm gonna be talking to obviously tomorrow morning, and then after the game tomorrow night to Jack about his first experience in the playoffs and maybe what the differences are for Jesper and Nico a couple of years ago versus now, and how they felt then versus how they do now. So I'm working on that for the 4th period. And that's all I got right now. Obviously, other than some basic coverage with game stories and such.
Yeah, and make sure you're following James Nichols at James Nichols NHL on Twitter. He's going to have all the fun stories, all of the friendly banter with Ryan Novozinski over at NJ.com. It's going to be a lot of fun. The Devils are back in the playoffs. Our beat writers are here for it. James, we really appreciate you coming on. We'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good, boys. Anytime.
Thanks, James. That is James Nichols of the 4th period coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, a lot of great stuff there. I still the Luke Hughes thing is just still standing out to me, but again, I've beaten that into the ground like a dead horse. But yeah, everything you said about Shesterkin is true. Like it's all about Shesterkin, right? If the Devils can solve him, and they have solved him with their bread and butter, speed, and just peppering them with quality chances. That is what the Devils have done to Shesterkin this year. If they can still do that in the playoffs, not only might the Devils win, this might be a short series. But I don't think they'll. I think that it'll take a couple games to establish that.
Yeah. Well, let's get our next guest on. His name is Dan Rice, pucksandpitchforks.com beat writer. You can find him on Twitter at DRiceHockey. Dan, how are you, my friend?
What's going on, guys? I'm all right. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. It's Devils playoff hockey, Dan. It's Devils playoff hockey. I gotta ask. You've been on the beat for 10 years. We celebrated your decade. I love having you on our team, and I gotta know what it feels like. What does it feel like for you? I mean, we kind of knew we were making playoffs the whole year, but you don't know with this team until you know. Now that it's here, how do you feel as the beat writer?
First of all, thanks for the intro. It's actually been 20 years. If we're
20.
going to be technical, it's crazy. Like I thought about that kind of in the off season, and like I started maybe not on the beat, but like my first year covering games in person was with Stan Fischler in 0203, and I'm like, man, this is easy peasy, right? We go right to the Cup final. Everything's coming up roses. And they were successful, no doubt, for a number of years after that, as far as making the playoffs. But they ultimately kept falling short for whatever reason. This year, it's exciting. They've been in a playoff spot. Like I've written a couple of times, said it on Twitter. They've been in the top 5 in the NHL since the end of November. Like they never really fell out of that, and that's crazy to think about. Like I think we talked about at the beginning of the year. I said, maybe they'll be kind of like where the Islanders were this year, where Florida was kind of battling in it till the end, and you have to go down to maybe game 80, game 81 to actually get in. They were, we were at the All-Star break, and we're already looking at Devils Rangers first round, probably going to be the matchup, and it's kind of crazy to think that that's the way that it worked out, because there were a number of times where they tied Carolina, right, and they had the chance to jump over them, and they would just tie them, or they wouldn't get that point. It's exciting though. It's fun. It's fun to be on social media, and everybody doesn't want to like call you a jerk off. Like you could write articles about maybe lesser players on the team, and which I kind of like to do sometimes, and people are okay with it because everything is kind of going rosy. Like you can write stories about Ryan Graves and and stuff like that. So it's been great. I'm a little nervous maybe about the matchup. I think if they had a different opponent in the first round, I might feel a little bit more confident about their chances to advance, because of what the Rangers are and everything that they bring, and all the attention, and we've all watched those games over the years, and how quickly they turn on dimes. But it's exciting, and hopefully it's going to be a long series. I got cleaned up for the occasion, starting fresh, clean slate with the beard. So I'll be there tomorrow, and we'll be ready to rock.
Love to hear that. So you wrote your most recent article, a singular article. You were the team article that went on today, but on Sunday you put in an article that just kind of like spoke to a lot of the Devils, spoke to Lenny Ruff, just kind of what the mindset is, what the thought process is. The thing that really stuck out to me was the Timo Meier side of things, and like kind of how he fits into the whole thing. I feel like that got a little bit lost in all this. The Luke Hughes hype, the big of the playoffs, Jack Hughes going for 100 points, Nico Hischier season. You kind of forget that you got this superstar winger just a couple months ago. What are your thoughts? What do you expect about the impact that Timo Meier is going to have against the New York Rangers?
I think this is exactly the series that they got him for. Like this is the moment. Like if I was talking with a buddy of mine earlier, and like if he has this a series, as I think he is, because he's a big time playoff player. Like we've seen a little bit in some of these tighter games. The Boston game, especially at the end of the season, comes to mind. Like he was one of the best players on the ice in that game. That was a really tight check-in, physical kind of game. He knocked over Pasternak at the end of the game, and that kind of fired everybody up. I just think he's going to just thrive in this kind of situation. And if he has a big series, and if he's a crucial piece in them advancing, Devils fans are going to like this guy is going to be a hero for like the next 10 years here. I think all that kind of plays into him wanting him to stay, or him wanting to stay, right, and wanting to sign here, getting a taste of this experience of what this could possibly be for not just this year. This is just the start. Like this is the next 3, 4, 5 years. However long they can keep Jack and Nico and the core of this team together. Like And you mentioned Luke Hughes too. Like that's another thing that kind of popped up. Like Timo's been able to quietly contribute, but also really figure out the system. I think it had been 30 days to the end of the season that he had been with the team. And they play in games every other day, so it's hard to get practice time in. But I know from talking to him and from reading what other writers have written about and speaking with him, he's put in the work, like whether it's off the ice, going over stuff on video with the assistant coaches, during practices, during games. Like he's really put in the work, and I think he's been a great fit, especially on that first power play. I think it just gives them just a huge added dimension that they don't really have that bigger body guy. Like they have that, but it's in less talented players on the team. But to have him in that presence, the beginning of the season, they had a Nate Bastian on first power play, and I love Nate, and he can play that role. But I think with those guys, like you'd rather have a Timo Meyer, and we started to see it at the end of the season. The power play was really starting to connect some really quick passes. Like I said, this could be the start of something really special for them. But first, you got to handle the business at hand.
So I feel like a lot of the conversation with impact and importance is going to come down to Vitek Vanacek. And you wrote for our big preview article on pucksandpitchforks.com that you think that he is the most important player to the series as well. With that said, what do you expect out of him? He's never played this many games in his career. What do you expect out of Vitek Vanacek, let's say specifically in this series?
Yeah, I think, I don't think it's going to be a sweep. I don't think it's going to, I'm pretty confident it's going 7 games. So he's going to have to show an ability to bounce back. But what I've loved about him all season is he makes a lot of the saves that you're supposed to make. And he makes a lot of the ones that sometimes you're not supposed to make. And that's allowed the Devils to, kind of have that springboard kind of, all right, he made a big save. Now we go the other way and we score. And if he gives up a goal early, like they've shown the ability, like we just saw it in the last game against Washington, right? V wasn't playing, but they give up a couple of goals early. They're down by 3 twice in the game, and they just roar back. And it feels like a lot of times no deficit is too big, and that's huge, I think, for a goalie where he knows I can make a mistake here and there, and this team is going to have my back because they're going to put up 3 or 4 goals. Does that come down a tick maybe in the playoffs? Maybe. I'm not expecting it to be a high-scoring series. If we get one like 4-5 game, and the rest are 2-1, 3-2, 1-0 game, like that's kind of the series I expect it to be. I heard you guys kind of talking with James at the end there, like they're gonna have to find a way to crack Shesterkin, and if they do, and if they did during the season, if they can implement that same kind of game plan, and they have a really, really good chance to be successful. And I think if they get out of the first round, then it's, this could be a pretty lengthy run. I'm not going to say they're going to win the cup, but they can probably make it to the conference finals, I think, if they at least get out of the first round. But, we'll see. We have to get there first. We have to, play the first couple of games. Injuries always play a big part in any series, so it becomes kind of that war of attrition, and we'll see how the teams hold up. But V will be a big, big part of that.
I've been asking a lot of people this tonight, and just kind of in general, because all I hear from the national analysts and even the Rangers analysts is experience. And I think a lot of that has to do with people wanting the New York to be in there and seeing that the Rangers went all the way to the Eastern Conference Final last year. I do think that the Metro was a little strange last year, but that's neither here nor there. How much do you take into account the Devils' youth when looking at the series against the Rangers?
Yeah, I think, that experience, like, every team is different from year to year, right? Like, Patrick Kane and Tarasenko and some of these guys weren't on the Rangers last year, so they've never gone through a playoff with this group of guys, right? It's the same kind of thing with the Devils. And I actually looked at it, like, they only have, I think it's if Luke plays, that'll be like the 10th player that doesn't have playoff experience at this level. Everybody else has played playoffs, just not here, right? Dougie Hamilton, Tomas Tatar, Paula, Timo Meyer, John Marino, so on and so on. Like they all have a little bit of experience, so it's not like they're all like gonna shrivel up in the moment for game one and just get the doors blown off them because they're inexperienced. It would be, if they lose, it's going to be they're making mistakes. Maybe the first 5 minutes jitters, but then after that, like they're a good team. They've played against good teams all year. Like they're ready for this moment, I think, and maybe a little hiccup early the first couple of minutes, but as we said, like they show the ability to come back numerous times this season. I don't know, 25 times, 26 times. Like,
Yeah.
I think they'll be all right. Like, and they've kind of gone through this together as a group where they didn't have a lot of changes during the season other than Meyer coming in, and Lazar, right? Like, so this group has been through a lot together, and they know they can win at an elite level. So the only team I think they didn't beat was Boston this year, right? And Boston was find me a team that was able to really play with Boston a lot, and the Devils did. They just made a couple of mistakes, and Boston usually makes you pay. And but I don't worry about that experience thing. The Rangers, they have some younger players too. It'll be the first time for them playing in a Devils Rangers series, right? So you can twist those things however which way you want to fit your narrative.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense, and I do think, like you said, you called it what it is. It's a narrative. It's just kind of like something people like to talk about when it comes to the series as a whole. Just kind of like, hey, like we need to find storylines besides the obvious. And what ends up happening is everybody talks about the same thing: the experience. Like you said, Palat. Even Vanacek has played in the playoffs. It didn't go well, but sometimes that builds on it. Actually, one thing I do want to ask you, this is kind of off the rundown, but I'm curious because I wrote about it today. What is your thoughts? Because you wrote about Tomas Tatar multiple times this season and kind of his impact on the team. And I'm curious of the weight that this might have on him. He's been benched in 2 different Stanley Cup final runs in his career with 2 different teams. But he's coming to this team. He's accepted with open arms. This team loves having him here. Even when he struggled last year, coming into training camp, it seemed like the Devils were all about integrating him back in the lineup and finding where he fit correctly. So do you think there's extra weight there? Do you think that's going to impact him that he's had these bad experiences? And do you think even the weight of like his contract, like how is that going to impact a guy who's been so impactful for this team?
Yeah, and I think it's a valid concern, but I think he'll be fine. I think he's proven all season like he can play kind of up and down this lineup, whatever kind of role they've given him. He's done well. He's obviously succeeded really well on Nico's line with Mercer. Like that trio has been maybe their most successful trio throughout the season, where they've played the most kind of stretch of games together. And I saw somebody point out today, like, you have one line with Nico and you have Nico and Mercer, I guess, and you have another line with Jack and Jesper, and then you have Timo on a third line. Like, your opponent isn't going to be able to put their best defender against all 3 of those, lines. So you're going to have to pick and choose your matchups, and that's where kind of like the chess game kind of will come in. And I think Tatar is a valuable guy. Like, he's universally liked in the locker room, definitely by the media because he talks to us a lot, obviously. But he always gives you really deep and thoughtful, I think anyway, insightful kind of stuff. And, we kind of like not try and bait somebody, but you try and lead them into an answer sometimes with the questions that you ask. Yeah. And he's really a team first guy. Like, he's not thinking about the contract or what his numbers look like this season. There were numerous times where people would bring things up to him, and like even at the end of the season, like, yeah, you guys tied the record for Devils wins, and he's like, oh, really? Like, that's pretty cool. Like, I didn't know that. Like, I think sometimes as especially as journalists and fans too, like, we look too much into certain things, and like players just kind of they go out and play. Like, they play for wins and losses. at the end of the day, like that's why they're playing. They want to win more than they lose, and he's one of them kind of ultimate team guys. And I think, as I've written, I think he's going to be an X factor this season in the playoffs. I think he's going to have at least one or two big moments where he saves the day, and that's what you need in the playoffs. It can't always be Jack or Nico or Brat. Like it takes everybody. Like you have to have, and that's the Devils when they were successful over the years, right? It was one night it was Sergei Brylin got the game-winning goal, and the next night it was Scotty Niedermayer, and the following day it was Jay Pandolfo got a game-winning goal. Like that's what you need. Like you need those guys to kind of step up in those moments, and if the Devils are to be successful, we'll see a lot of that contributions from kind of everybody.
Dan Rice, you're covering this series for pucksandpitchforks.com. You'll be in the building for some of the games. We're excited to see you there. What do you got coming up? Do you have anything fun planned for the playoffs?
Nothing much. I'm going to try and do some quick turnaround stuff with, obviously being there for the home games. I'll try and do like maybe a little bit of a longer form recap, depending on how the games go. If there's an event or a moment, maybe I'll kind of focus on that. But I want to try and pump out as much as I can here, and hopefully it's a long series. Hopefully it's an even longer run this spring. But I'm just really stoked to first time in 5 years for doing some playoff games. I was fortunate enough to do some PHF playoff games a couple of weeks ago. First time doing playoffs, covering playoffs anyway, since before the pandemic. So really stoked, and I know the atmosphere is going to be loaded tomorrow night at the Rock.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a fun atmosphere. This feels like, I know it's only 5 years in the making, but 2018 felt like we're happy to be here. This feels like 10 years in the making. This feels like since 2012 we've been waiting for a game this important.
Right, and the expectation is and I've said to people privately, like even if they lose in this round, like this was a very successful season in my estimation. Like we didn't expect them to be here. The expectation now is this is going to be the norm for the next 5, 6, 7 years, right? Like these guys are just going to get better. You never know, injuries happen, and as I said, no team is the same from year to year, but I think a lot of this core of this team is going to be in these positions for the next 4 or 5 years, and hopefully it goes in their favor, and we all have a lot of fun stuff to write about, because writing about losing teams sucks. So I'm going to be honest. Like it's not the most fun thing in the world. I haven't been there. I haven't even gone on to Tankathon like once. Like, and that's like, by this time of year, I've done it like 500 times, because I would start in like January. Like, so it's been nice. I hope everybody out there really enjoys the playoffs. I hope, it's obviously goes in the Devils' favor. That makes my life a lot easier and a lot more fun. But hopefully everybody just, keep it respectful. I know it's the Rangers, so it can get pretty heated, but like, just try not to make it personal with people. It would be my only little bit of advice. I know the passion is out there, and we all love that. And, everybody, especially within Devils fans, like, don't argue with each other too much. Like, you're all on the same side. Like, you gotta friends. You gotta harness all that energy and focus your chi and export it out into the open towards New York. Like, trying at least for the next 2 weeks.
Well, Dan Rice, I appreciate you coming on. We look forward to your coverage. If you haven't seen it yet, check out pucksandpitchforks.com. Dan Rice wrote a piece just looking at the entire playoffs and what everybody has to say. Lots of really good quotes in there. Love what Lindy Ruff had to say, too. So check that out, pucksandpitchforks.com. Dan, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon. Have a good night.
Thanks, Dan. That is Dan Rice at pucksandpitchforks.com.
Now, Sam. He mentioned something, which is why we are the professional transitioners. I know our next guest is on, and this is why I have to say this. He said be nice to each other. Now, our next guest is coming on because I originally Twitter trolled him and kind of like just did the jerky thing, but it's Rangers-Devils week. So I did a jerky thing, and he brought up Kakko, so I brought up Hughes, and it got retweeted into oblivion. And I was like, you know what? maybe I should get a Rangers perspective on this podcast. We need to be unbiased to the nth degree, Sam. So why don't you introduce our next guest?
Should I block that sign in the background?
It is what it is. It's there.
That's the old. I did that Photoshop back in like 2003, and it actually went viral. I'll just show everybody. Anyway, all right. Our next guest, his name is Adam Herman from the Bleacher Report. You can find him on Twitter at Adam Z Herman. Adam, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're doing better. I'm not gonna lie. I'm glad I'm not your. I didn't mean to explode your notifications. I saw it went into I thought I was gonna be like, maybe I'll get like 1,000 views on this, get everybody all pumped up, and then I looked at everybody's reaction to yours. I was like, oh man, he had a shut off notice for this one.
Oh yeah, it got muted. Absolutely. Not your fault per se. It's just kind of how it goes. Everyone sees something like time to get their jab in and put their meme, whatever it is. Like it's fine. No one crossed like a serious line or anything, so it's all good.
Well, that's good. That's good. Because that can happen pretty easily on today's Twitter. But Adam, you write for Bleacher Report, so you do have that national look. You try to have that unbiased look across the league, but obviously you love yourself some Rangers. So we had to have you on to kind of get that kind of that spin a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. No, I understand. I think there'd be a decent number of Rangers fans who said if you wanted a particularly pro Rangers perspective, you got the wrong person. I get criticized a lot for, being a little bit more cynical than other people, but nonetheless, yeah. I would say I'm actually a little bit more optimistic about the team than I was last season, certainly. So we'll see if they can match or surpass last season's outcome. But I think going into the playoffs, at least they're coming in with better odds.
So let's start. Since you said you're positive about your team, let's start with the positive here for your perspective, not for us. The negative for us, the positive for you. If you're a Devils fan, if you're the Devils locker room, if you're the Devils in general, what is going to scare you about this Rangers team? What about this Rangers team scares you the most?
Yeah, you saw a little bit of it in that one game after the deadline, but I think what Devils fans haven't seen from the Rangers since most of the games against the two teams were earlier in the season is that the Rangers are now, for the first time since probably 2015 or so, like a four-line, three defensive pairing team, plus obviously Shesterkin and net. Last season, as I was saying, it was kind of a situation where could the top players kind of outproduce the deficiencies in the bottom of the lineup. And now, for better or worse, Barclay Goodrow, who was a big free agent signing, is now centering the fourth line. Former Devil Jimmy Vesey's there. Tyler Miles acquired at the deadline. They have a legitimate fourth line, which was a big problem in the playoffs last season and earlier in the regular season. And there have been times where it's been the best line for the Rangers this season. And then, on defense with the addition of Nico Mikkola, it's not a perfect defense by any means, but it's a legitimate. They have 6 legitimate defensemen back there, which is not something they've always been able to say.
So would you attribute that to the just the depth that you're talking about? Would you attribute that to the trade deadline moves that Drury made, the Tarasenko, you mentioned Mikkola and Kane? Is that what solidified the lineup?
Yeah, I mean, like in short, yes. Like I said, VC was a nice off-season signing and such, but for sure, earlier in the season, it was a nightmare on the third pairing, the left side of the defense, and the fourth line. So absolutely, Drury. He nailed the deadline more or less. And it's not just you think of the big names, Tarasenko and Kane and such, but it's not even just what they bring per se, but just the fact that. If you're a team like the Devils, and look, the Devils have, plenty of depth themselves, so I don't think it's going to be like a huge problem. But, if you want to stack, Dougie Hamilton out, put him out there against the Panarin line, all right, well, then who's going out against Zibanejad, Kreider, or if you put them out against then there's the kid line who've been, for much of the season, the team's best line. So it's not just like, okay, Kane's a good player, Tarasenko's a good player, but it's the fact that now it's a lot harder for a head coach like Lindy Ruff to match lines, to say, okay, you got to pick your poison, so to speak, because the Rangers now have, three scoring lines and a fourth line that can hold its own defensively plus chip in occasionally. So yeah, absolutely. It's like I said, it's the players that Drury added, but also kind of just now the fact that head coach Gerard Gallant has a full lineup to really work with.
Yeah, and just to give the Rangers their flowers, like Shittle's a guy who I am worried about him. Like I think that there's going to be a lot of canceling out of Jack Hughes and Panarin and Heischer and Zibanejad and Kreider and you could go down the list, but you look at it, and when you're going to be like, okay, well, I need Eric Holla to be as good as Schittle, then you're like, okay, that's that can happen, but it's asking a lot. That's kind of like where I look at the Rangers. I'm like, okay, like they are deeper than I kind of expected, and kind of what I saw earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there have been times where he's been the best player on the team, like some nights, and Rangers drafted him first round, 2018, and it's been a slow burn with him. And it's for a while, it was kind of you'd see flashes, you'd see 5 games where he looked like a guy who could be a top 6 center, a top 6 center, and then he'd go long stretches where he would struggle. This season, for the most part, he's just been on it. He's just having 7 out of 10 game, 8 out of 10 game, 9 out of 10 game. And he is, when you speak about like the Devils, it's a fast team. I think Hedo's going to be the guy at the Rangers have to lean on a lot, because he is just in so many aspects one of their fastest players. And then, since he plays that pivot position, you're matching him up against a Jack Hughes. Possibly he's a guy who could theoretically, at least attempt to contain him, whereas there are other players on the team, other centers on the team, are not so sure you want him matching that kind of speed. But yeah, that's like I said, having a player like him who, on a number of other teams is a second line center, maybe even on a handful of first line center, just kind of that, that excess, having like a super third line center like that is, every team in the playoffs is good, and it's the great ones. Every team has 3 or 4 really, really good players, right? Like, and it's that next tier, like who's that secondary level of depth that kind of pushes you above the rest. And Heedle's that kind of guy as a pseudo third line center who can be the difference maker.
So now I need you to say nice things about me. I need you to tell me I'm pretty.
Yeah.
What is the thing about the Devils that scares you?
Yeah, it's I hinted at it. It's the speed. Obviously Hughes, comes to mind most prominently, but just the entire team. They skate fast, they play fast, a lot of quick touches in the neutral zone, a lot of entering the neutral zone with speed. And the Rangers defense is just not well built for that. Adam Fox is kind of a unicorn, and Keandre Miller is a phenomenal skater. But they're kind of built, the defense is on the bigger side. Not so much built to deal with that kind of speed, not just the straight line speed, but just the quick changes of direction. Like I said, the lateral puck movement. I think we saw in a number of games during the season against the Devils, the Rangers were taking penalties in the neutral zone because they couldn't catch them. So there's just a lot of tripping, a lot of hooking, because they were attempting to make plays with their sticks because it was hard for them to do so with their feet. That's really where I think if the Rangers lose this series, that's where I see the biggest. That's what I see being the biggest culprit. It's just that the Devils are just a faster team.
So I'm, and you kind of alluded to this earlier about how the Devils saw a different Rangers team and in the regular season, but I'm still curious about what is your take? Like, how much weight do you put to the regular season? Do you think it helped the Rangers, the Devils learn about each other, or do you think that maybe it's going to be a different play style, different deployment? Like, do you take anything out of the regular series matchup?
I mean, yes and no. It's they're very familiar with each other tactically. If you ask a guy like Dougie Hamilton to describe Artemi Panarin's game, he's going to be able to do it in a detail that he couldn't probably about someone like, let's say Matt Tkachuk in Florida. It's just, there's little things they're going to have ironed out in ways that they might not have against other opponents. That being said, it's different teams. Like, do I think the results that happened in November or December, do I think they matter particularly much right now? Not really. It's just, like I said, different teams, the coaching staffs have had times to adjust There's gonna be a lot of kind of meta game here where the Rangers know what the Devils want to do, so the Rangers adjust now, and then the Devils know that the Rangers are going to adjust, so that's going to happen. And players and coaches talk all the time about how Rangers play the Devils in December. You play them once, then you're flying off to Columbus, right, or whatever. This is 4 to 7 games against each other. You have time to really kind of just not just create your own systems and such, but create an opposition scouting report and play specifically to the opposition's strengths and weaknesses. It's a big test for head coaches Gerard Gallant and Lindsey Ruff, like I said, because it's not just what your tactics are, like, what systems you're playing, but how do we adjust to what the other team is doing, and then how they adjust to what we're doing and such. So, like I said, they mattered in that, the teams aren't going to stray too far away from their systems and such. The players are the players. But it is a new time. I mean, right? Like we saw, it took a while for Timo Meier to get going, right? Took a bit for Patrick Kane to get going. So yeah, these are still they're kind of somewhat new teams. So I do think it matters a little bit, but it's a completely different kind of test now in so many different ways.
Do you think there's anything that was learned in that last matchup? Actually, let me rephrase the question. Do you think that last matchup is going to be? Is that what you expect the series to look like? That was a grinded out, just stressful for 60 minutes. Is that what we're looking at for probably 7 games here?
Yeah, I think so. If I remember, it was a bit ago, but if I remember, I believe like the Devils played better, but I also remember thinking like either team could have won it. Yeah, that's kind of what I expect. I'm expecting tomorrow a team's going to win by 1 goal, and it's just going to be like one team made the better play, one better play, and then you move on to the next one, and whoever's team lost is going to freak out. But I do expect this to be a long series. I expect it to be a grind. The fans are going to be in it for obvious reasons, not just because Rangers Devils, but because it's been a while since the kind of rivalry's been relevant. And, it's 2 very good teams. They're not just 2 teams that happen to be in the playoffs. They're 2 teams that are very realistic cup contenders. So yeah, I thought it was a nice kind of like little preview of what's to come.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's kind of funny because the Rangers have been, you went to the Rangers went to the Eastern Conference Finals just last year, while the Devils haven't won a playoff series since the Devils beat the Rangers in 2012. There's an extra kind of pressure on there for the Devils. But with that said, I want to know, you said you were more optimistic about this team. So I assume I know where the prediction's going, but I kind of want a prediction. And then if you can, kind of give me your key players, if you give me one from each side that you think it's going to really make or break this series.
Yeah, well, it might be a bit counterintuitive, but we published that Bleacher report, I believe this morning or yesterday, but I picked Devils in 7. It just came down to the fact that they have home ice advantage. If Rangers collect a few more points in the regular season, I'm picking Rangers in 7. I just think it's just going to be such a tight series. We'll see. But I think it's just 2 very good teams who do things very differently, but just the total output of it is going to be a lot of back and forth, highs and lows for both teams. And I really do think it's going to be, one period, maybe 1 goal that kind of determines this. Key players for the Devils, I think it's, Vitek Vanacek. I think that's kind of, a lame answer a little bit, just because it seems like a little bit narrative driven, but it's, he's going up against Shesterkin. I don't think Vanacek's a poor goaltender by any stretch, but he's going up against a lot of firepower. His previous experiences in these kinds of moments, in Washington weren't spectacular. Maybe you don't agree, but I think if there's one thing that sinks the Devils in the playoffs, it's goaltending. I think you look at the rest of the roster, aren't that many issues all around. It's just kind of, can this guy be the one, or, do they pivot to someone else to, maybe Blackwood? I'm not sure, but that's a whole controversy in itself.
Don't hurt
obviously,
me like that. That's painful.
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes it takes a village, but I don't even think he has to be great, because I think the Devils are going to carry play for majority of the game, which I think the Rangers are also fine with, because they're going to be reliant on special teams and Shesterkin. So I think for Vanacek, it's just, can he not let in the soft goals? Can he not be, blow it in the pivotal moment? I think if he has a respectable showing, then it's very much in the Devils' favor. Yeah, and then for the Rangers, I think it's Jacob Trouba.
Okay.
He's had a real up and down season. He's going to log a lot of minutes for the Rangers, for better or worse. In a lot of ways, he's built for playoff hockey, just because a lot of space is taken away. Refs let physical play go. As I said, the Devil's speed is such a huge issue. And Jacob Trouba, he does a lot of things well, but he struggles skating in the neutral zone, defending the rush. They need him to be able to take away lanes, to force dump-ins rather than carry-ins, to not take penalties, because he's going to log a lot of minutes. But his style of play is it's at least ostensibly built for this type of series. Plus, he is the team's leader. I think when he got the captaincy, early in the year, people were like, sure, that makes sense. He's one of the potential options that were there. And I think as the season went on, he really established himself as kind of that guy in a number of ways. And, I think another issue for the Devils potentially, I think, things like leadership and playoff experience and such can be overstated. But the Devils are definitely the more inexperienced team, and you want a guy like Trouba to kind of step in there and, have the Rangers ready in that type of way. So I think just on and off the ice, he is the guy. If he plays well, it's going to be a huge boon for the Rangers. But if he struggles defending in the neutral zone like he did at times this season against New Jersey, it's going to be an issue.
I agree. I agree on just about everything there. But Adam, I want to give you a minute just to kind of plug everything you guys are doing at Bleacher Report. BR Open Ice has been phenomenal this season, so I kind of want to give you a chance to tell us what's going on for the playoffs over at Bleacher Report.
Yeah, well, there's a number of us. We're doing a bunch of different things. I'm actually kind of focused on the draft a lot right now. But
okay.
I will be, as far as I've been told, I will be doing kind of, as teams start to get eliminated from the playoffs, kind of a season wrap-up type thing, what comes next, what's in the future for them in the offseason, and so on. But other than that, it's kind of depends how things go. I'm sure I'll end up writing something about Rangers Devils, just, it could be an observation about what's working for one team versus another. I see you have my Twitter handle on the screen, so you can follow me there. I tweet out articles usually, or whatever, my thoughts about the series. But yeah, we're looking forward to it. It should be a really, exciting series, I think, for a number of reasons. Obviously the rivalry, but also it's just two really fun teams that play different styles, but are very talented.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that we can all agree on is this is probably going to be the most, on paper, it's the most exciting series that it looks like in the playoffs. Like, two phenomenally fast, fun teams, new style of hockey, and just stars abound. It's going to be a fun series. Adam, I'm not rooting for your team, but I'm rooting for your team at Bleacher Report. So I hope everything goes great over there, and we look forward to your thoughts on this series as they come in. And we'll have you on, next year when we look at Rangers Devils again. We'll have you on again then.
Yeah, sounds good. Everyone, stay out of trouble. Enjoy the series.
Thanks, Adam.
That is Adam Herman, Bleacher Report. You can find him on Twitter, Adam Z. Herman. Nick, believe it or not, I make a lot of friends online after trolling.
I don't believe you.
After trolling them for a couple years.
Listen, Adam was great. It was, and again, you want to get the Rangers' perspective, but you want to get it from a guy or a girl with clear head. I think we've done that a lot. We've tried to get Larry Brooks on. We try to get people who cover the Rangers, right? This is a Rangers. We want a Rangers perspective for a reason, but we don't want, the complete. Everything I'm going to say is somewhat offensive, so I don't want to say anything. But you know what I mean. Somebody who's going to have rose-colored glasses on about everything. And Adam came in. He had, he picked the Devils, which is wild to me, because I do think that this series is razor thin. And I looked at it, and I had Devils in 7 as well, because I have a little bit of a bias. I've been watching this team all season, And I made it a point that I think their 5-on-5 play is going to win them the game in Game 7 specifically. I think something else is going to win every other game of the series for whichever team. But in Game 7, the Devils are going to just shut things down on defense and just make sure that they're in those high-danger areas at all times on offense, and that's how they're going to win.
I'm on the complete opposite spectrum of yours.
You have the Rangers in 4?
No, I have the Devils on 4.
Oh.
Oh.
I mean, the complete opposite would be picking the Rangers.
Oh, well, yeah. But that's not going to happen. I'm not that stupid.
No. But yeah, we got one more guest. Are they here or are we still waiting?
He's here. I'm just waiting for you to intro because I have pronunciation issues.
Okay, Matt Vererame from Sports Illustrated.
Here, let me do it.
Sorry, you threw me. Like, you got to.
No, let me do it. Our next guest, now officially a friend of the podcast, second time on. His name is Matt Verderame from Sports Illustrated. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Verderame. Did I do that right?
I give you a lot of credit for trying it because people do it all the time and they screw it up. It's Verderame.
Verderame?
Verderame. Okay.
Verderame. So
Verderame,
listen,
see?
you do the best you can. I had a principal for 4 years in high school who, God knows, saw me all the time and couldn't pronounce my name. So, no worries, guys. Matt Verderame, and I'm happy to be here. Appreciate it.
See, this is what happens when you're a writer, right? Everybody sees your name. I've seen your name for years, and I was like, I think it's this. It's Verderame. I get Vigiano, I get Vigiano. It's fine.
It happens.
Verderame. Now that I know, we'll never mess it up again. But Matt, obviously, we brought you on here to give you your flowers, to congratulate you moving to Sports Illustrated. What an honor. Really excited for you, and just wanted to kind of say congratulations on that big promotion there. If you're not following Matt, make sure you're following him. He's writing a bunch of great stuff for SI Now and Sports Illustrated.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I had 8 great years at Fansided. I loved every minute of it. And yeah, now it's been fun having a new challenge. Jumping in here at the NFL. I'll be out in Kansas City for the draft. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and that's going to be a lot of fun. But I'm sorry, Matt, it's not going to be as fun as tomorrow night. The Devils return to the postseason. First time in 5 years. The first, and I've been saying this all night. This is the first meaningful game since Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals in 2012. It is the first meaningful game that means anything. Because 2018, it just was kind of, we're happy to be here. This is a team that can win. So, I just want, what's your emotion for this? What is like your emotion as the team heads into the postseason?
I think it's a combination of two things. I think one is if you just kind of remove yourself from it a little bit. No matter what happens in this series, in my opinion, this has been an unqualified success of a year. And nobody thought they would be hosting a first-round series. Nobody. I don't care if you're the most optimistic Devils fan in the world, or if you were like me the first time I was on this podcast, which was after they lost the first 2 games, and I was ready to fire everyone involved. Okay? Look, obviously, if they get swept or something, then yeah, it's a calamity. But like, if they play the series out and they don't win the series, and it's a hard-fought 6-7 game series, as disappointing as that would be, I think you're realistic in the fact of looking at it and going, listen, this team is really young. It's in great position cap-wise. They seem to have a general manager who has found a formula with this team. There's nothing to be upset about long-term. The other part of me says, I think the Devils are better than the Rangers. I think they should win the series. And I'm a Devils fan, but in football, I'm a Chiefs fan, and I took an ungodly amount of crap because I picked the Bengals to beat the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. Like, if I don't think a team's good enough to win it, I'll say it. I think the Rangers are really good. I wouldn't be surprised if the Rangers won the series, but I do think the Devils are the better team. I think they've been the better team. They've played them this year. I think they've been the more consistent team throughout the season, save for their one stretch in December where the Devils went in the tank for about 3 weeks. But I'm just excited for it. I think the Devils have just proven at this juncture, look, they're capable of not only beating the Rangers, but going on a pretty significant run.
And that's the thing that I've been trying for weeks now. We've been focusing on kind of the national perspective here for the last couple of weeks on this podcast. And tonight we kind of, because we knew tonight we were going to go full bodied on the beat writers and the local guys and the Devils focus guys, and everybody kind of says, I'm like, nobody's talking about this team making a run. Nobody's talking about this team as an actual contender, and maybe that's just Boston, being the controller of the Eastern Conference, but it's a surprise when you see anybody even have the Devils in the not only the Stanley Cup final, but the Eastern Conference final. So when you say it out loud, do you actually believe that this team, like, would you be floored if this team won the Stanley Cup?
I wouldn't be floored because I think they're really talented. I think it's very hard to have absolutely zero experience and then just blow through the playoffs. That, I think, is very hard to do. And look, let's also be clear. Let's be honest about this. Boston is a powerhouse, like a historical powerhouse from a regular season perspective. Now, we have seen teams like that, including the Lightning before they went to their 3 straight Cup finals here. We've seen teams like that get in the playoffs and things happen and things change. And you know what? You don't know. All of a sudden, obviously not hoping for it, but Olmark gets hurt or Bergeron gets hurt. All of a sudden, it changes everything. I've also seen teams in my life, sometimes even the Devils or a team against the Devils, where they just get going and they're rolling and it doesn't make a lot of sense on paper, but for whatever the reason, that team is just on fire and you can't beat them. So I wouldn't be stunned. I mean, they finished with the 3rd most points in the league, but I think if you're a Devils fan, you've got to be on. If they get to Boston, they are considerable underdogs. Anybody's going to be playing Boston. And then I think you'd have to take it one game at a time and just try to put pressure on them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you brought up Bergeron because I think you'll get a kick out of this. Boston came out and said, because I guess Bergeron was questionable going into today's game. Yep. Like, oh, don't worry. If we don't have Bergeron, we got Pavel Zacha. I was like, I've been there. I've been if you don't have Nico, you have Pavel Zacha. If you don't have Zajac, you have Pavel Zacha. We've been there as Devils fans. I have a warning for Boston. Don't do that. Just put him where he's at. Put him next to Pasternak and just hope it works out.
Yeah, Pavel Zacha's had a really nice year and good for him. But if you're relying heavily on Pavel Zacha in a playoff game, good luck to you. Have fun.
So obviously this is the Devils' first series in a long time. We brought that up, but it's against the Rangers. Yep. Put on your fan hat. Why is it imperative for the Devils to win this series?
To be taken seriously nationally, I think is the biggest reason. Look, they're always going to be the stepchild in the metro area because they're not the Rangers, and the Rangers have been here forever, right? And now, with my fan hat fully on, although I think this is also fair analysis of this, I don't get why they're underdogs in this series. And by the way, they're not in Vegas. In Vegas, they're the favorites. Yeah. Like, betting-wise, they're actually the favorites. But in terms of, people picking them, and every time I see them picked against, it's almost always because of one or two factors. Shesterkin, which, fair enough, he's a great goaltender. That's fair. Or experience. What experience do the Rangers have other than losing in the playoffs? The Rangers have won 1 Stanley Cup since World War II. I mean, it's not like the Rangers are trotting out a bunch of guys who have hoisted Lord Stanley time and time and time again. I understand Kane obviously has. Tarasenko won a cup with St. Louis. I get it. The Kreiders and the Zibanejeds of the world and the Shesterkins and Foxes of the world, all these guys, none of them won anything. None of them. And to me, all that stuff means nothing. If the Devils go out and win, whatever, any score you want to throw out there, 4-2 in game 1. The Devils know what experience is going to bite them in the rear end in game 2. To me, that stuff is overrated. I think it matters if they get to a game 7. Then I think there's a little bit of that because there's so much pressure on every single play, or maybe even an elimination game if they're down 3-2 or something. But the Devils are really talented. And the Devils also, by the way, have guys like Palat who have won cups. They have other guys on that team that have been in big games, have been in the playoffs. If you want to tell me that they're going to lose because it's Shesterkin, okay, fine. He's been up and down this year, but he's a great goaltender. I'm not going to hear that they can't win this series because of experience. And I think for the Devils, the main reason, from a fan's perspective, you got to win this series. Yeah, the bragging rights, sure. But I think it's more If they beat the Rangers, they'll be taken seriously. At that point, then it'll be, okay, they're not just a team that had a great regular season. They beat a team a lot of people thought coming into this season would win the Cup. So I think that would give them a lot of push. And look, they'd play either Carolina or the Islanders in the second round, and I don't think either one of those two teams is a team you look at and go, yeah, the Devils couldn't beat them. So I think you'd be pretty happy for a Devils fan with that.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny. I'm kind of thinking of like, I'm going to write an article soon, probably tomorrow, about just like historical comparisons of why the experience thing doesn't really matter. And the one thing that kind of like jumps into my head is the 1988 Devils, obviously a little bit before our time, but
yeah, they went to the conference final against Boston.
Yeah. A team that had never made the playoffs, not only in Devils history, but I believe in Rockies history, never made the playoffs. So this is just a team that just only knew losing, and the first time they make the playoffs, go all the way to the conference final. So, there is precedence to this. Obviously, the 80s are a lot different, but playoffs are playoffs. It's still a 1 through 8 kind of scenario. I think that it is overstated, the experience factor. It is overstated of what that matters. It just matters who has the better team.
I would buy that more if the Rangers had ever done anything.
Yeah.
The Rangers, it's like that team's just filled to the brim with a bunch of guys who have hoisted it at MSG. None of them have. Like, your experience factor is fine and well. They lose every time they're in the playoffs. It's not like they're playing Tampa. Tampa, to me, that matters. Tampa's a team. They're not going to panic. They could go down 2-0 in Toronto, and I'd still give them every shot to win that series. That team is not going to panic. What are the Rangers going to draw on when they lost in the quarterfinals or the conference finals? To me, that's all fine and well. You have experience. You have experience of losing in the playoffs. It's not like they have all these great, wonderful memories to draw. Now, they've won some series. I'm not saying they've done nothing, but it's not like you look at them and go like Colorado has experience and they just won the Cup. The Lightning have experience, or the Penguins for all those years, right? Or the Capitals for all those years. These teams who time and again, especially in the case of Pittsburgh, have won multiple Cups. Like, okay, I'll buy that. What is there about the Rangers that, to me as a Devils fan, I have to have a heart attack playing the Rangers? The Devils played them 4 times, so they beat them 3 times. Vanacek's numbers are almost identical to Shesterkin's on the year. Now, I don't think he's as good as Shesterkin, but I think he's good enough. The Devils to me, the biggest advantage in this series is their skating. If the Devils can get the game opened up, I think the Rangers have a major problem when Fox and Miller aren't on the ice. And I think the hard thing is, if you're if you're playing the Islanders, like the Islanders or the Hurricanes, they're going to play a very defensive-oriented game. They're going to pack it in. They're going to play very close to the vest. The Rangers do not want to do that. The Rangers are not a team that wants to sit there and they want to run. They want to get out there and go. If I'm the Devils, I'm begging them to play like that. By all means, go ahead and do it. Because the Devils play that way, but they're better at it. So I really think the Devils are in a good spot.
So you've seen your team, the Chiefs, win. They're the defending Super Bowl champs.
They are.
And you kind of see you saw it brewing early, and then they just started winning championships. Now with 2. Do you see any similarities between like those early Mahomes Chiefs teams and this Devils team? Like, do you feel like you're rooting for something that's brewing to something great?
I think that what the Chiefs taught me as an analyst too, but also as a fan, the Chiefs before Mahomes were good for a long time. They won a lot of games. They won division titles. They even won a playoff game with Andy Reid and Alex Smith. But like when they got to the playoffs, they'd run into Tom Brady and Ben Roethlisberger and Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. And in the end, like you had to play perfect to beat those teams because you didn't have the guy. You just didn't have the guy. And then Mahomes showed up and they started beating the hell out of everybody. Well, there's a reason because they have Mahomes, right? And nobody else does. And in the end, he will deliver you in a lot of ways. The one similarity I do see with the Devils have guys like that who Jack Hughes could get the puck on his stick and go end to end and beat 3 guys and put it in the net. And there's nothing you're doing about it. Like With all due respect to Panarin and Zibanejad, who, by the way, fun fact, I actually covered Mika Zibanejad when he played Binghamton, at Binghamton Senators. Okay, I was the beat writer for that team.
Nice.
Great guy. And he was, as you can imagine, he was a damn good player there too. But that team was loaded. The team had Peugeot, had Mike Hoffman, had Mark Stone, Ben Bishop. That team was Mark Borowiecki. That team was ridiculous.
Oh, wow.
And
That's a lot of really good players.
I'm sure there's more. Robin Leonard was the starting goaltender. Bishop was the backup on that team. Yeah, and they got swept in the first round of the playoffs. And by the way, Luke Richardson was the coach, who nobody I have ever dealt with in sports I have more respect for than Luke Richardson. But in any event, to get back to the question, I just think the one similarity is the Devils have guys that when the game is tight and it's on the line and you've got to have it, they've got guys who can just go grab the game. And that is something like, that's why, frankly, I look at Carolina and I'm interested to see how this plays out with them, especially with Svechnikov out. Who's that guy? Who is that guy? You know, who's going to just 2-2, 5 minutes to go in the third period? Who's going to say, get on my back? The Devils have a lot of guys like that. Meyer, Hughes, Heischer, Bratt, Hamilton, all five of those guys. Mercer's emerging as a guy like that. I don't know how I'd put him there yet. They have guys like that where anytime they've got the puck, the game could change instantly. Now, the Rangers, to their credit, also have guys like that. But the Devils, to me, the Devils have the best player in this series. He can tilt the ice in a way nobody else can. And I think that's something that Mahomes brought to Kansas City, where they might play some other really good teams, but nobody tilts the field like him. And I think when you have that in a big spot, it is largely the difference maker.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense. And, you know, when you got Hughes in the draft in 2019, that's what you expected, and now you got it. So you really love to see that. Let's get down to brass tacks. Prediction time. Time to put your money where your mouth is. Well, we're not asking for money. But I do want to know, what is your prediction for the series? Who wins? How many games? And then who do you think is going to be an X factor? Somebody we don't expect to kind of really push the Devils over the top.
All right, so let's start with the X factor. I think the X factor, I don't even know if you call him this, I guess, at this point, but Palat. This is why they got him. This is why Andre Palat's on this team. You know, they got him to bring along the young guys too. I mean, nobody's doubting that, but they really are bringing him in to have games like this. Let's face it. I mean, this is what it's all about for him. And one kind of like a 1B is Kevin Ball, who has been paired with Hamilton lately. You don't have to be great, but you got to be good. You can't make mistakes. I mean, and to his credit, there's a reason he's been on that pairing. He's been really good. But you know, that's a kid who he does not have a lot of NHL games under his belt. And that's going to be fascinating. As far as the pick goes, I've gone back and forth on how many games. I'm going to take the Devils in 6. The Devils have been great on the road all year long. I don't think the Devils have any problem closing out the Rangers at MSG. I don't. And I think, you know, it's one thing I will say, and this is just a gut feeling with the Devils, because I could be completely wrong with this part of this, or any part of it, I guess. I could be completely wrong. I think sometimes you look at teams and you're like, yeah, that's a young team, and not so much. I don't believe in that whole like happy to be here thing, but like sometimes you look at a team, and you go, all right, you know, they're kind of still feeling their way. This Devils team, and I think spearheaded by Jack Hughes, they don't lack for confidence. Like, I don't think the Devils are going to go in here nervous playing the Rangers. I don't think the Devils are going to have any trepidation about what they're going into. So the reason I started debating the games, part of me wants to pick the Devils in 5 games. I just think the Devils, man, I've watched hockey for 27, 28 years. If you can outskate the other team, you typically win. And unless you have a sieve in net, which the Devils obviously did for years, you're probably going to win. And I just think I think when Fox and Miller are not on the ice in this series, I think the Devils are going to run them into the 4th row. I think the Devils are just going to take the puck and fly up the ice. And the Rangers, to me, I've seen so many people say on television who cover them specifically, Well, they're going to have to play a little bit of a different game. Nobody's playing a different game than what they've played all year long. You are what you are. The Rangers don't want to sit there and dump the puck in and play in the corners. It's not what the Rangers want to do. They want to get up and down the ice. And if they do that against the Devils, they're going to lose this series unless Shesterkin absolutely stands on his head. So give me the Devils in 6. I'm confident in them. I think they're going to play very well.
Matt Verderame. Did I do it right?
Verderame,
There we go.
Think of Ram trucks.
Okay, Verderame.
Yeah.
Verderame.
right.
Matt Verderame. I lost that one. That was bad. We're going to move on. Matt from Sports Illustrated. Take a sec. Let everybody know where they can find your stuff. Let them know if you got something cool coming up draft-wise, NFL-wise. What do you got coming up on Sports Illustrated?
Oh, a lot of draft stuff. Just a mock draft where I basically mock drafts, and I trade every single pick, and we just have fun with it.
Oh.
And then the night of the draft, by the way, I'm going to be a basket case because it's Game 5 of the series. So I'm going to have the Devils on my computer and be watching it the entire draft while also working. So that'll be interesting.
Okay.
I'll actually leave this because you can also follow me on my Twitter handle. I'm at Verderame, where I spend way too much time. But I'll leave it with a question for you guys. Will Luke Hughes play in this series?
I think he does. I've asked this of a couple of the beat writers, and they say no. But I actually think that the Devils are going to lose tomorrow night. That's my prediction. But I think that there's going to be a point in the series where Lindy Ruff has to look in the mirror. Lindy Ruff, who's never won a Stanley Cup, and this might be his last chance. And he's just going to be like, screw it. And they're going to go with the best talent. You're going to see Timo Meier back on the top line. You're just going to be like, we're going to put our best guys out there, stop them. And the Rangers won't be able to. And I think Luke Hughes is going to play a lot of games this playoffs for as long as the Devils go because he looks ready. Sam, what do you think?
That's a tough question because if you put Luke in, is there a problem? But if the Devils win, normally you bring in these young guys for a spark.
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a problem with the
team,
team, but it might be like, what if Ryan Graves makes a mistake? What if Kevin Ball at the moment is too big? There could be small, minute issues that can be fixed with Luke Hughes.
I agree with Matt though. That inexperience. I mean, look what happened in 2000. I mean, John Madden was a rookie. Rafalski was a rookie. Colin White came out of nowhere.
Gomez.
Granted, they had Scott Stevens and Niedermeyer, Danico, and Brodeur, but
that helps.
But it's a different game now.
Mogilny.
It's a different game.
Was Mogilny on that team?
Yeah.
They had plenty. They had a lot of. They had plenty. But again, I know what you're saying. There were still a lot of contributors who had quote unquote no experience.
I just wonder if you're the Devils at some point in the series. Maybe you're up 2-1 or something, but you're having a pairing that's playing a little bit of shaky hockey. Like you just say, you know what? That kid, I know it was a meaningless game in a lot of ways. Game 82 with Washington. How many guys do they have on that team at forward or defense who could have made that play that he made to win the game? I mean, he blew through 3 guys and it was the second game of his career. I don't know that the Devils have that many forwards who would have done that. His brother, Bratt.
Yeah.
Mercer. That's probably the list.
Yeah. I don't even think Nico. That's not his game. So not even Meyer's not his game.
Power guy, right? That's probably the list. It's probably Mercer, his brother. Hamilton, Dougie would have just pulled up and rocketed that thing. He wouldn't have been going in the way. Hughes took that puck and went between 3 guys, including Alexander Ovechkin. Shot it, got the rebound, went around the net and slammed it in.
That's the underrated part of that. And that's kind of what we haven't talked about is that he didn't score on the shot. It's one thing, the shot was impressive to get past everybody, right. But the part that showed you he is NHL ready was the fact that he didn't score, got the rebound, and had enough hockey IQ to be like, I'm not just going to pound this at the net. The wraparound is open. And I think that's why.
I don't
That's
know.
why you start him.
I get it. Like, he could make some killer mistake too, and that's the yin yang of this. Like, I totally get it. He's also the kind of guy that you could have a tie game with 7 minutes left, and he just takes the puck, and there's a crease, and the Rangers make a bad change, and he's gone. Like, up the ice, 2-on-1. I don't know. I get if they don't play him. I understand it, but I'm going to be really annoyed if they're not playing him and Ryan Graves has like 3 turnovers in his own zone the first 25 minutes of the series, and I just lose my mind. And I like Ryan Graves, but I don't know. I don't know. By the way, I'm assuming you're both picking the Devils to win. What are your how many games you guys having?
I got him in 7. I think Game 7 at home. Ridiculous atmosphere. I think Shesterkin's going to steal 2 games, but it's going to fry him by the end of it.
I'm calling a sweep.
Sam,
I'm calling a
sweep.
I'm calling a sweep. When Matt said 5, I was like, one more game, Matt. One more game. You could do it.
I could just, and I'm not trying to drag this on. I know you guys got to go. I could see a scenario where the Devils just, like, so Nick, you're picking them to lose tomorrow night?
Yeah.
I could see a scenario they just come out tomorrow and they're out shooting them like 12-2 to start that game. Yeah. And it's just up and down, up. I mean, I just think the Rangers are going to have to slow them down by playing a game they don't want to play. Like, the one thing with the Devils is the Devils forwards, by and large, play defense. Not every one of them, but a lot of them. The Rangers forwards are not exactly Jay Pandolfo getting back on the back check. I mean, you're not going to see Patrick Kane jumping back into the play and breaking it up. Like, I think the Devils are going to create a lot of odd man rushes when those second and third pairings are out there. I'll take my chances. I think Shesterkin's great, but I could easily see this being 2-0 going back to the Garden. And good luck at that point. I don't know. Maybe we're all wrong. We're all dopes. We're going to find out. But I'm very confident in them. I really am.
Listen, as somebody who does a bold predictions article like 3 times a year, I'm very often proven wrong. But, I would be happy to be wrong. If they win tomorrow night, if they win in this first game, I don't ever want to hear about experience again if they win in their first game in the playoffs ever with this unit. And also, I think that I think the Rangers are going in here with what I call Jason Terry level of confidence. Like, it just seems like they have an irrational level of confidence in this team. And I think if you punch them in the mouth in game 1, maybe Sam's right. Maybe it's a sweep or maybe it's 5 games because I don't know if this is the type of team. And Gallant is a good coach, but he's kind of shown this year that he's kind of a streaky coach. So if you could get them in one of those bad streaks, I think that's it, right?
I'll leave my portion of this at this. You guys remember like a week ago, maybe it was like 10 days ago? It was after they'd clinched. I can't remember if it was right after, or maybe it was like a couple games after. Jack Hughes was interviewed in the locker room, and they were talking about potential matchups. And he was like, I think a lot of guys in here would like to play the Rangers. Like, it was just very casual about, I think, that'd be fine if we got the Rangers. And it wasn't said so much like in a disrespectful way. It was just kind of like, yeah, that'd be fine. Like, if we play them, I don't think, if you're the Devils, why do you have any fear of them? What's the reason? I mean, honestly, the only game you lost is at the Garden and blew a lead. Other than that, they beat the doors off them in one of their wins. The other one, they came back and won. That game that kind of turned their season. And then the most recent game, and they won 2-1, but Shesterkin stood on his head in that game. They still won. So there's a part of it, because if you're a Devils player, like if you're Nico Hischier, you're Jack Hughes, you're Jesper Bratt, do you care? I think, by the way, the biggest X factor in this, they've got to stay out of the penalty box. That is the one way in this series with the Rangers. They have a great power play. I mean, Zibanejad has 20 goals on the power play this year.
Yeah,
you've got to stay.
Kreider had like 30 on it last year, so it's.
If you stay out of the box and you make them defend and play 5-on-5 hockey, and I honestly think too the other part is they got to skate with the Devils the whole series. As the series goes on, everybody keeps talking about experience. You might skate with the Devils game 1, game 2, by game 4, game 5. That's a lot. That is a lot. And if you're on the power play, you don't have to do it. They're hemmed in. If you can keep them having to skate, I think the Devils, that's where the advantage, I think, really starts to take effect for Jersey.
It's great. Right. Matt, that's all we got. But that was that, and that's the end of the show. You took us all the way to the end. You finished us off. But Matt, I really appreciate you coming on. We'll look forward to your draft stuff. We're gonna pay really close attention on draft night to see be like, oh, let's see, is he getting all the scoops, or is he focusing on Shesterkin trying to stand on his head? What's going on?
I will be watching the Devils while doing draft blurbs. I hope for you that Aaron Rodgers doesn't get traded that night, because that sounds like the one thing that could like flip the NFL on its head. I hope Sam's right and it's not even Game 5. I don't think he's beat him 4 straight.
There you go.
I can just relax.
4 straight.
Matt, thank you so much for coming on. We're obviously going to have you on again soon.
Hey, anytime. Happy to do it, guys.
Thanks, Matt.
Take care.
That is Matt Verderame. Is that Verderame?
Verderame.
Ram Trucks. Find him on Twitter at Matt Verderame. Sports Illustrated writer.
Hey, that's a great gig for him, but he's deserved it for a while. Been kind of, secretly waiting for when he's going to get that big gig, because he's been doing a really good job at everything he was doing for Fansided, and he was a blessing for Fansided, but you knew he was going to eventually get something great. And honestly, like, salt of the earth, awesome dude, never let it get to his head. He's always been a really cool guy to talk to. And as you see, he comes on the podcast, he chills with us. Love to hear things like that.
He respects my prediction.
I don't know if you actually think. Do you actually think they're going to beat them in 4 straight?
The only concern I have is that Madison Square Garden ice that tends to be a little jumpy, the puck, especially this time of year.
I honestly think, because this is and I'll make this quick because I know we're at the end, but I almost think that's an advantage for the Devils, because I remember that being a concern in the Stadium Series for the Devils, because the Devils were the slower team. Remember, the ice was melting, and it made the game just incredibly fast.
But that's where the experience lies, because the Rangers are used to that ice. So that's where the bad bounce or whatever. But I mean, it's the Devils. It's for them to lose. I'm not saying the Rangers are a bad team. I'm just saying that go
matchup.
Roll 4 lines the entire time and just keep pushing it up the ice. But expect the Rangers to be blocking a lot of shots. They're going to get hurt by Game 3 or Game 4.
Yeah. Sorry, Sam. We've had 2 hours of analysis here. I think
You're
I've been on my interview game. Yeah, I'm on my interview, and I gotta perk up because
I've got to have dinner.
I had to run to Wawa because I asked my wife. She's like, "Oh, well, I got to go to Trader Joe's." I'm like, "Oh, I guess I'm on my own for dinner then."
I'm going to Quick Check afterwards.
Man, we don't have any Quick Checks over here. I kind of wish. I love Wawa. Wawa's still king for me of all the convenience store chains, but it's just nice. It would be nice to have a Quick Check to have something a little different every so often, but
yeah.
Maybe you can mail me a Quick Check sub. I remember they had a really good chicken sub last time I had them, but that was years ago.
Oh, they're 100% organic. Ooh. Anyway, they should be paying us.
Sam, you need to work on that.
Yeah. All right.
But before we go, I do have to plug. So, pucksandpitchforks.com, as you know, I promised you yesterday 10 articles over the next 2 days. 5 of them went up today. Pucks and Pitchforks, massive playoff preview is up. 13 writers, Sam Wu included, myself included, 3,000 words on the Devils' playoff journey. Dan Rice has a piece out. We promoted that a little bit earlier. We got my piece, which is talking about the 4 New Jersey Devils who need a Stanley Cup win. Need it. It's necessary. And then we have Jonathan Bailey wrote a piece. Ethan Fink wrote a piece. David Holliday wrote a piece. I got 2 Sam in the docket from Vinny Parisi that I'm going to edit to go out tomorrow morning. I'm going to write 2 other ones tomorrow. I have a list. I don't remember it off the top of my head. And then Tyler Russell, one of our newer writers, he has one in the docket. That's going to go up. I believe it's on Andre Palat specifically. So that one's going to go up tomorrow morning as well. You will get 5 more articles tomorrow. Tomorrow you're getting 5 more articles. And then we'll be writing throughout the series. And don't forget, just because we're on tonight on Monday, we are still having Wednesday's State of the Fan Address. I think we already have a guest lined up, and you're all going to like it. So make sure you check that out at 8:30 on Wednesday night.
Alrighty, and also Game Day Live and Devils After Dark. It's going to be an outdoor podcast tomorrow. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Outside of American Whiskey 51 Edison Place. Also, I'll be going into the game as well. I'm going to be schmoozing. I'm going to be the schmooze. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Thank you to all our guests. Mike Morreale, Matt Verderame, Dan Rice. Who else? James Nichols. Adam Herman.
Adam Herman?
Yeah.
That's everywhere, right?
That's it. And go to pucksandpitchforks.com, dropping the podcast at midnight for your morning and afternoon commute. Remember, Game Day Live at American Whiskey before the game. Till next time, let's go Devils.